Welcome to AI for Growth, Lessons from Leaders. I'm your host, Megan Driscoll. AI for Growth is a podcast that demystifies AI for business owners. Each episode features conversations with leaders who share their experiences, covering the good, the bad, and the ugly of AI implementation. We aim to help businesses understand how and where AI can effectively scale your operations, focusing on practical insights rather than just hype. Welcome. So today I am welcoming Jacques Fradet to the show to AI for Growth, Lessons from Leaders. Really grateful to have you here today and excited to talk all things AI, business growth, small business, all the fun stuff. So I want to start by just, can you introduce yourself? Tell me a little bit about yourself and your business and kind of what you do and who you work for.
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you for having me on today, Megan. Appreciate it. I'm an operations executive and consultant in the broadest sense, and I leverage my previous careers in finance and in engineering in order to distinguish, the value add that I can bring. So to put this in more, tangible terms here, I'm a partner in a private equity firm called Windstream Capital based in Phoenix. And I do have some managerial responsibilities for one of our portfolio companies, which is called Keep Safe, which is a manufacturer of security windows and doors, the likes of which a lot of people have never seen before. It's very interesting stuff, very unique. I also do some independent consulting with a variety of companies, and including one that is an Asia-based ERP, enterprise resource planning software company called Kyocera. So try to get involved in a lot of different things.
Yeah, great. I love that because it's a broad experience. You'll be able to talk about a variety of different ways in which AI has impacted business. So one of the things I like to start off and asking is, again, most of this, this is a show for small companies who are growing primarily and who are looking to implement AI and other things, but they want to learn a whole host of other things if they can. So I wanted to talk about, or just ask you a little bit about what you think is the single largest bottleneck that you face when you're starting a firm or growing a firm early on.
Yeah, right. So the single biggest bottleneck is getting equity financing. And getting equity financing is very important because it does not put a time constraint on the ROI the way a loan would do. But basically, it impacts everything else that you do with the company. It enables your capital expenditures and various other things that you can do. So it gives you that flexibility. And so when you, especially for the companies that I'm involved in, which have a lot of innovation, it's very difficult to get that equity financing because you have to sell those investors on the product concept, and that's not always easy to do. And of course, they ask for a lot of financial information. There's a lot of due diligence, and it takes a long time, and you can work on a deal for months and have it fall through. So you really have to be very good at not just selling your product innovation to consumers, to customers, but you also have to be really good at selling it to an equity investor. So
yeah,
that's
and I
probably
think
the
it's
biggest bottleneck.
a different kind of sale, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
yeah,
They're
I
very
remember when
demanding.
I was, yeah. And I think it was really, and it was actually a nice process to go through. I hired a broker to sell my business. So I sold my business through a broker. And I remember when they give you the pitch book and you look at it and you're like, holy crap, I look great. They make your company look really nice. And it is a sale. It's a sales process. And the investors that we were looking for were not necessarily totally interested in the EBITDA. Of course they were in our, profitability, but they were also interested in the management company and what we had to offer and our vision for the future and our ability to articulate that. And I do think that companies kind of lose sight of that early on. It's like thinking about how you're going to sell your business to your customers, but also how you're going to sell your business overall. What is that elevator pitch?
Absolutely.
What makes you special? What's the special sauce?
Yeah, totally agree.
So in your experience, what do you think are the first, like maybe one or two processes or issues that founders sort of mistakenly try to automate too early? And what do you think is the consequence of that rushing?
Yeah, so I would say any process that you try to automate too early is not a good thing. You really need to. So I'm going to bring in terms that are, close to my heart as an operations and manufacturing expert. Is that, and these are terms that I think most people, have heard of before. But basically, you have to bring a Lean Six Sigma approach to defining your processes and evolving your processes. You really have to make sure you understand them, not just think about it, but you have to draw it out on a board, and you really need to get the team together and make sure that everybody really understands the process very well, because what you're going to automate, if it includes a lot of waste, is still going to be wasted automation. And
Hmm.
it could be, you can create automation that is just completely just not useful, and spend some money on it. And I'll give you one example of something that I know that I've run into quite a bit, which is that companies will want to implement an ERP software. And as an example, Oracle or SAP or something like that. And those are very expensive. They're wonderful. They're wonderful tools. I've used them both, plus others, and really, it's a very good thing to have. But unfortunately, if you don't understand your processes very well, and they come in and implement something, and the thing with ERP systems, any kind of a business system like this, they are going to have to do some implementation. They're going to have to do some customization for your business. And if they customize to something that is inefficient, that you are wanting to evolve out of and change, you're going to spend a lot of time implementing something that's automated for something that is really not useful for you. So
Yeah.
you really have to take that approach and get your processes, understand them in a hands-on sort of way, and get in there and make sure that these are the processes you want to continue on with. Then you can automate for sure. Automation is a fantastic thing if it's a really a time saver, and it increases your productivity for sure.
Yeah. So really like refining and refining and refining to the point where you feel like, okay, I've got this. And now you can go out and seek. And I think that's actually a really important point, especially as it relates to AI. AI can solve a whole bunch of problems, right? But if we
Mhm.
don't very clearly define what those problems actually are, what are those operational bottlenecks? What are the issues related to sales, lead generation? What are the bottlenecks just generally? If we don't feel really clear on how we're doing something, it's really hard to go out to AI and say, well, I'm going to choose something to fix it, because you might be fixing the wrong problem and
Right,
also creating a new one.
right.
If you haven't fixed the right problem, you end up creating a new problem that you didn't have before. So I think that's a really important point. Um, Tell me a little bit about your experience, because you've worked with a variety of different companies and you also, work for private equity. Just kind of tell me a little bit about the sales process. Like, what do you think is a good sales process?
Well, I have to say, for the companies that I'm involved in currently, and actually previously, is that we did not sell directly to consumers. Okay, so there was no real direct to consumer interface except for reverse logistics, getting returns and things like that and processing those. But for example, the company that my private equity firm is involved in Phoenix, we are really mostly a manufacturer. We sell to dealers. So they're the
Mhm.
ones who talk to the consumer and the homeowner and try to sell these products. And of course, they also install them. And the same thing with the company and other companies I'm involved in. But the company that I mentioned, the ERP software company in Cambodia, and Southeast Asia in general, they also sell to resellers. So they don't
Yep.
go out themselves and deal with companies necessarily directly. So our sales process is actually fairly straightforward in terms of, when orders come in. It's more of a sales operations process. Orders come in and they get processed. But what I will say though is that one of the things that we are always on the lookout for in these innovative kinds of industries, like we're that I'm involved in, and we've been talking about, is lead generation, is finding those dealers, right? Because they also need to be, if you're doing a very innovative product, those dealers also need to be educated on how to approach, as to why they should carry our product. And of course that'll also influence how they approach their customers, and they may have an existing customer base and are doing something similar, but not the same thing. There's a lot of things going on there, and the lead generation, I think, is a very important thing to get squared away, and of course AI can help quite a bit with that.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I want to talk about, because I do think I'm going to just jump into that a little bit right now, since we've talked about it. So, I find that one of the things that I've noticed in the last few years that I've been working with companies and implementing AI and investigating AI and doing more demos than probably anybody. I don't know. I do a demo a week now, even just to
Mm,
get up, just to stay up to speed on some of the AI. And
absolutely.
I think where AI really gets it right is in the space of lead generation. And I do think there's a lot of amazing tools. Particularly, I think we do a really good job. I think AI does a really good job with B2B right now in lead gen. I think B2C is coming. I think we're going to get there. I actually think that we will probably in the next year have a workaround for, right now, the best way to get to your customers is to pay for Google ads and show the Google ad when the person's, looking for the specific piece of, I'm looking for a horse, and all of a sudden the horse dealer shows up, um, and that's a lot of money. Most companies are, spending hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars per day,
Right.
basically, to show up in that feed. And there's no ROI necessarily. I mean, they're getting some business from it, but they're missing so many of those leads because they don't actually get the information. And I think we're about a year away from that being completely bypassed and getting information off the back end using the IP addresses. So I think
Right.
it's going to be, I think Google's going to go down for the count, quite honestly. That's my prediction. We'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you kind of reminded me, but one of the inefficiencies in the past that I'm hoping, we're not quite there yet with lead generation. I mean, it is kind of a very much a new frontier. At least I feel that way, and most of the people that I work with, who are also working in this space, feel this way. And I'll give you an example, the sort of thing that we have done traditionally, which is trade shows. And
Mhm.
trade shows are wonderful, but as you know, they're very expensive. To haul all of that stuff, to a trade show, and you do see quite a few customers, but trade shows can also be hit and miss.
Mhm.
And the other thing that happens at a trade show very often is that your competitors are there, and
Yep.
so you really do want to kind of go out there and find your dealers or whatever your customers, B2B or whatever it happens to be, that you are finding them and able to get them to focus on what you're doing. And
Mhm.
very often today, of course, to go into a trade show can be a very nice thing, but we need more now. And it can't be just a trade show, a once a year trade show, and that sort of thing, and all the the costs that are involved with that. So yeah, we are definitely experiencing, we're experimenting with AI in order to do lead generation, and even that is can be very tricky, right? Because the
Yeah.
information that's out there on whatever dealer you're trying to approach or customer, some of that stuff can be outdated or inaccurate. So, you do have to prompt quite a bit and work with the AI. It doesn't
Yeah.
just give you, an automated response that you can take to the bank.
So I actually have, my business is the go between the tech and the company, so the customer. And I do most of my work B2B. So I'm really working with, B2C again is a little bit more of a frontier, and I'm helping B2C. I'm more helping from an operational standpoint. How can we like save time and money? Not necessarily how do we do a lot of like lead and sales gen. I just think that lead and sales gen is much further along for a B2B company.
Hmm.
You can get creative, and I have done it, and I do it, but for the most part, I think the B2B is better. but there is, so one of the things that I love to do is, so I have a program that actually tells you buying intent. So, as an example, I can go and find out in the ERP case, let's use as an example, I can go and find out all the companies in the United States that searched for ERP platforms in the last 7 days. And it
Hmm.
will tell me whether it was a high, medium, or low. So, in high being, it pinged 50 times in the last 7 days, and
Right.
at low being like 10, essentially. And then I can reverse engineer that to find out. Now, I don't know exactly who the ping came from, but if you are implementing an ERP software, it's probably the director of IT. And so then I can reverse engineer that and pull the names of all the directors of IT at these companies that were pinging for ERP software. So
Right.
that's how I do it,
Yeah.
which is really cool. Um, so that is out there right now, which is it's kind of amazing actually. I love where it's headed. It's super exciting.
Yeah.
Tell me about it's funny with small businesses. I find that small businesses are operating their sales process pretty much on Excel spreadsheets, which is fine. I
Hmm.
mean, many people do that,
Right.
and do it for a lot longer than they should. But tell me a little bit about, like, do you advocate for CRM, for companies to use CRMs? What's your
Yeah.
feeling about it?
Well, this kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier. And of course, I do have background, as does my one of my partners who's in charge of sales with Windstream Capital. We've all used Salesforce and all that, and that's kind of one of the. It seems like Salesforce is everywhere, but they have similar other programs have similar properties and capabilities. But the difficulty then, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about implementing ERP software for your company before you really understand your processes. And one of the things for us, again, trying to educate the market and sell the market and equity investors and all of that on the product, is that the CRM for that, is not, let's say, as useful as other tools. I know that and I'm not really the expert on it as much because I am the operations person in the company, but have worked with my sales partner about using Atlas AI and using
Mhm.
agents, again, about finding out things for the market. For example, we set up an agent in our small industry. We do have competitors who are also not very well known, who are also very small, but we monitor their websites. So we have an agent that goes out there, and if they do anything to their website, we get an alert, right? So we
Mhm.
don't have to keep checking ourselves. And so there are things like that that kind of involve marketing and sales and just dealing with the market in general. And so I know that when we started using Atlas AI, probably it was a few months ago. Atlas AI also is going through changes all the time. I haven't been there for every change as the program evolves, and of course there are so many competitors now. There's so many AI apps out there, and they are constantly evolving. But yeah, we are trying to use it to the best of our ability. And so instead of, to answer your question, something like Salesforce, maybe someday, again, love Salesforce, used it for years in more than one company. But the, for right now, something a lot more targeted like an Atlas AI or even ChatGPT and I know that my partner loves Grok, so I let him.
Mhm.
He uses Grok. He can, use that, but I use,
I use
ChatGPT.
Claude. Claude is my favorite.
Okay, yeah. Everybody
I love
has a
Claude.
favorite, and it should be that way. It absolutely
Yeah.
should be that way because
Yeah.
it really is about, you know, for me, AI is really search on steroids, and
Mhm.
you really need to you still need to be very, use your own brain when you're using this. And some things just work better for you. So to have an individual preference says a lot about your ability to, you know, make AI work for you instead of just having AI tell you things and then you just run with it. You still need to use it's just a tool, and you
Yeah,
really have to,
totally. And I think as it relates to CRMs too, I also implemented Salesforce into my organization, and it was not only, in fact, interestingly, I know somebody who works for Salesforce, and he's in
Hmm.
implementation. And I talk about, "Well, you guys don't do implementation; you sell it, and then you basically let them figure it out." We had to
Yeah.
hire like a secondary organization and spend. I mean, I want to say we spent 50 grand on the just to hiring someone to help us figure out
Right.
how to make it work for us. That was
Right.
beyond the even cost of Salesforce in general, which is also a very expensive implementation. And I felt, I think Salesforce is the right is like the leader. It's the biggest, it's the best, it's, it's what everybody thinks they're going to use. And I think when you get to a certain point, I think it makes sense.
Hmm.
But I really advocate for some of these smaller platforms like HubSpot, Go High Level. There's quite a few programs out there.
Right.
Again, this is what I do. I help people, like as an example, there might be HubSpot will integrate with Calendly, but
Hmm.
not MailChimp, as an example.
Right. Yeah.
And so understanding the tools that a company is already using rather than overhaul everything that they do, let's
Right.
find the tools that you actually are using on a regular basis, and let's find the CRM that communicates with those, and
Yeah.
it is a back end plugin, and that's saving time, instantly. So it's in, and there, some of these CRMs are, $150, $200 a month, not that big of a deal for up to 5, 10, 20 users, things like that. So I think the price
Right.
of the CRM has come down quite a bit. And I think companies don't need to overdo it,
Right.
you know?
But yeah,
Um,
I was going to say, and that kind of does go back to what we were talking about earlier about automation. A lot of companies want to do ERP software, and again, CRM is not ERP. It
right.
is, and needs to then be interfaced with it, and that itself is another implementation,
Yes.
challenge. And so you better
Challenge,
have
and
your
it's expensive.
processes. Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
So do you currently advocate for, with the companies that you're working with, that, and I know you're not in sales, but do you advocate for them to use AI for lead generation?
Absolutely. And one of the reasons that so my business partner at Windstream Capital, who's involved in sales, he definitely uses that, and we talk about it quite a bit. He probably does more of the hands-on part of it. I do some of it, but he does more of it. But for example, the that Asia-based ERP software company, Kusen, they are one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved with them is that they are also implementing AI.
Mhm.
And so, it's still a journey, but, and I know that a lot of these software companies are trying to implement AI, but I think that with a, company like that, that's maybe a little bit smaller, it's not quite as large as, nowhere near as large as Oracle or SAP, that the ability to influence all of that is going to be greater, I guess. I actually just had a meeting this morning with the CEO of the company, and we were discussing just that. That the evolution of the AI that they want to get done before they really break into some of the other markets that they're not in right now. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think it's a
absolutely.
real, like you said, I mean, they're not Oracle. I do think that my personal belief on AI is that well, the biggest winners are going to be the people who implement, the people who
Right.
decide they're going to step their foot into it, and they're going to start. And you
Yeah.
just have to start anywhere. Just start, and beyond. We're not talking chat GPT. Like, you got to go beyond chat GPT into, like, I'm going to solve a problem in my business with AI. I'm going to focus on that. Once somebody does that, I think it's like the world opens up to them, and they're like, whoa, I could do a lot with this. And
Yeah.
so I do think that it's going to be an amazing accelerator for
Yeah.
organizations that are taking it seriously right now and don't miss the boat, and are what I would still consider to be early adopters at this point. And they may get some things
Yeah.
wrong, and it may not be perfect, but they will do so much more faster than their competitors who maybe aren't embracing it in the same way.
Yeah, I'd like to give you an example. So this came up actually in the conversation with that ERP company trying to implement AI, and I described to them something that I had to work in the past, working on these ERP systems. Like I remember doing an Oracle project that took me about 1 month to get going because I needed different outputs. The engine underneath, the calculation engine was there, but I couldn't get the outputs that I needed. And so I worked back then with the IT group at the company I was at for about a month, and they were, wonderful IT people, very competent and all that. But to get everything working took about 1 month.
Yeah.
And I was just discussing with the CEO of this company this morning, and he and there was somebody else with him on the call, a technical person, and they said, yeah, we think that using AI in order to generate that outcome or that output that you were looking for to change uh, would have probably taken about a half a day, maybe a full day. And I thought, wow, I can't
Insane,
wait.
right?
Yeah, that's just the savings, the productivity due to that. And I believe it. I totally
Yeah,
believe that
me too.
that is possible. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've seen it too. I've seen it. Things that were taking 8 hours take 5 minutes.
Yes.
And my clients like mind is like blown. They're like,
Yes.
how I don't even understand how this happened.
Absolutely.
um, okay, so have you ever used AI for marketing purposes? Is there any platforms, or maybe just more broadly, any AI platforms that you feel like you've tech that you've used that you like, just in general?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. So our we recently revamped our website for KeepSafe, our portfolio company, our main portfolio company at Windstream. And what we did was, I mean, we did it the brute force way. We went out and had myself and one of my partners. We just had very long conversations, with ChatGPT, and I think he used Grok. And it's one of those things where you just start just talking to it. Well, you can't actually talk to it. I was typing, but in any case, the and we ended up getting what I thought was a very good. And I'll just give you an example. We do security windows and doors, and the difficulty is getting a message. I got ChatGPT to generate a message, which took me a long time to kind of get at what I really wanted, and it created a very powerful message about our security windows and doors. And basically, it ended up saying that our products are better than alarms and guns and anything else, because we are preventative and things like that. I'm not trying to do a sales pitch right now, but
Yeah,
the
no,
thing is that without ChatGPT, I would not have come up with that wording. And of course, we
yeah,
did refine it a little bit. The partners got together and all that, but ChatGPT made it possible in the whole environment that we work in to create this breakthrough, right? To this aha moment.
hmm
And because of how efficient it is. And so I was just, I want to say I came up with it, but the reality is it was a conversation with ChatGPT that really created that breakthrough.
yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Tell me a little bit about. So I have two sort of like last questions that I ask everybody. What about AI makes you nervous?
Oh, yes. Yes. So what makes me nervous about AI is that, as I was saying earlier, it's a tool. And if people don't approach it as if it's a tool and just, you know, believe whatever it says, that's a problem. So I have a couple of examples. I was just a couple of weeks ago. I was I ran into a friend who works in IT for a pharmaceutical company here in San Diego, and he told me that the marketing team came up to him. We were talking about AI because he loves it and all that. It's a lot to talk about. And he said that his marketing team came up to him and just said, "We'd like you to install AI." And that was the end of the conversation. We'd just like you to install AI. And he said, well, what do you want to do with it? And they didn't know, they didn't even understand what the question meant. Like, what do you mean? What do we want to do with it? We want to use it. And but they didn't really understand what it was as a tool. And this is true of a lot of people still at this point. I mean, this will probably continue to be the case for a long time. I have another situation again, which I learned a very difficult lesson, which was I was involved in a contract negotiation. And so I used ChatGPT to help create my version of the contract. And the person I was dealing with also used ChatGPT or Grok or something else to for their version of the contract, and we went back and forth and back and forth. And so, my first thought was, well, we're going to save a lot of money on attorneys. Well, we certainly did not, because what happened was it became a conversation between myself and another person and AI on both sides and
Mm-hmm.
the two attorneys. So it turned out we were going back and forth, misunderstanding things, and I'm also as guilty of that. I'm not a legal expert, and so some of the things I really needed to look up, and so kind of shame on me, part of the learning curve for myself also. But that is an example of how you can think that you're using AI for productivity, and if you're not on top of what's going on, if it's not as it was, because I'm not a legal expert, it became very clear to me that I was using a tool that I really, in that case, that I didn't understand well enough to create that advantage or that benefit that I was looking for. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I think law is an interesting area. I intend to actually do a podcast with a lawyer to talk a little bit more about how AI has impacted it. And
absolutely.
I agree with you. I think people think that they can just go and create something and it's going to be legally binding, and it's not.
Yes.
I
Right.
actually have heard of like this very similar stories to what's happening, where it ended up costing more money because they're starting from a point. This is the thing with lawyers. You give them what you have, and it's like now they're going to start renegotiating and working with that. It's like would have been so much easier for them to use their template that's already done and ready to go
Right.
than renege yours. And so yeah, it's funny that you said that.
Absolutely.
What my final question is, what gets you excited about AI?
You know, I I think it's the time savings. It's how many, I enjoy working with ChatGPT because I am constantly amazed at how quickly I can get answers to things that I'm looking for. And so I do believe that, as I get better at prompting, and I think I've already gotten better at it, but as I get better and better at that and use more, just the evolution of me working with AI, I'm just finding just I'm constantly wanting to work with it, and I think it's extremely useful. So, but the time savings is just amazing. Like I said,
Mhm.
we were just talking about when you think that you can reduce a 1 month task to a half a day, right? I'm not
Yeah.
saying 5 minutes here, but half a day to a day. When you can save 90% of your time on a somewhat consistent basis, then and deliver real results, who knows where this is going to end up? It's a game
Yeah.
changer, and it's exciting. It's a new frontier. So my feeling is you just got to embrace it.
Yeah. I love that. Great. Well, tell me where people, if you want to find you and ask you questions or learn more about what you do, like how can they find you?
Yeah. So the place where I think I'm easiest to be found is at windstreamcapital.com. Sorry, it's a very long one, but it's those three words put together. And so that's the private equity firm that I'm involved in. And I'm also I can also be found on LinkedIn. So I have a very unique name. So
You do.
finding me isn't going to be very difficult. I'm pretty sure I'm the only Jacques Fradet out there. I could be wrong. I haven't checked lately, but you'll definitely find me, uh, out there. So I think that's the easiest way.
Super. Thank you so much for joining me today and
Thank
talking
you,
all
Megan.
things AI. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Had a great time.